And we see the sun rotates at 1,000 miles, or the earth rotates at 1,000 miles per hour. Now that's 24 hours to complete one rotation. At Ecuador, at the equator, it's a little over 24,000 miles, completes it in 1 day of 24 hours. That's where they get the 1,000 miles per hour. Now we click to the moon, and what we read about the facts of the moon, again, it's 1/4 the diameter, 1/6 of the gravity, yet 1/6 of the gravity from 238,000 miles away. It can move our oceans up and down twice a day. Think about that one for a little bit. Again, the atmosphere, there's no atmosphere, but it's 250 degrees during the day and minus 250 degrees at night. So if the astronauts were in their lunar module and they're trucking around in their moon buggy for hours at a time, how hot do you think the lunar module would have been to get back into when it's 250 degrees, okay? So here's what I wanted to bring up a point. So the rotation of the moon going around on its axis is 10.7 miles per hour, and at the Earth, around the Earth, it's 2,300 miles per hour to get all the way around the Earth in 28 days. But on its axis in 28 days, it also rotates at 10.7 miles per hour. And we see an explanation. We see that the rotation of the moon is locked by the gravity to the Earth, so it is showing the same face all the time. And here we see a counterclockwise rotation. Just note the rabbit ears. You can see the rabbit in the moon. Just watch the rotation of that as it goes counterclockwise. Now watch this. All right, so here we see a rotation of the moon counterclockwise, and here we see the rabbit ears going around and round in this time-lapse photography of the moon, allegedly. Yet we scroll down here and we see a time-lapse over 28 days of the phases of the moon, and look at the left over here. And here we see the moon not rotating one iota. Here's the rabbit ears, here's the rabbit ears, here's the phases of the moon. So this is over 28 days, and we see zero rotation of the moon. Folks, and if that isn't enough, let's click over to here and show you another version of as the moon turns or doesn't move, that the face is always facing us. All right, so here's moon phases for 2013, and we're going to set this in motion. And we're going to watch the moon rotate counterclockwise. Yeah. Oh, wait, what did it do? It started going the other way. Now here's the new moon. Here's coming up the quarter moon, silvery moon, the half moon. It's rotating. And then all of a sudden, watch what happens. It stops one way and starts reversing clockwise. Here we see a full moon going to a 3/4 moon, going to a half moon. Wait, now it's going back the other way, folks. Boy, I tell you, they just can't make up their mind trying to lie to us to tell us what story to believe about which way the moon is rotating so that we can always see its face. So we get to the definition of the orbital spin-on axis from Wiki as to why we see the same face of the moon. It's in synchronous rotation. It's only true on average because the moon's orbit has a definite eccentricity. It's eccentric. Did you know that? Now, they use confusing language and they mumble jumble and use terms like angular velocity of the moon varies as it moves around the Earth, which is basically saying it uses an elliptical orbit and is closer or farther away. All right, but here we get down to more of the definition in Wiki, and they refer to it as latitudinal libration. Okay, latitudinal libration appears only to oscillate back and forth and not to spin to show us the backside. So I understand why rotating back and forth would not show us the backside. And the word, there should be a libration, not libration. It's a spelling error by me. Though no such word is found in the major dictionaries, nor is it found in any etymology. You put libration in the dictionary and etymology, and there's no word for it, folks. They're just making this stuff up as they go along. Wiki defines this perceived oscillating motion. Now notice the two words that they always use, apparent and perceived, meaning what you see is not what's going on. The orbiting bodies relative to each other, notably including the motion of the moon relative to the Earth. So they continue to say that the moon is perceived oscillation, back and forth action, though moon in reality is rotating on its axis at 10.7 miles per hour. Means it's rotating. It's not oscillating, folks, as we went to in the beginning. Now let's get back up to this definition thing again in this picture, and it shows it shows the moon rotating, not oscillating. The rotation of the moon is locked by gravity. Now, what does locking by gravity have anything to do with the rotation of the moon? So its period, or the day, is the same as the orbital period around the Earth. So that means its rotation is the same as it's orbiting the Earth. It always shows the same face. We cannot see the far side except by launching a rocket and looking back. Does this make any sense to anybody? So let's take a look at a few pictures and I'll show you more of what I mean here. Again, we see here the phases of the moon, and there's no rotation during the different phases shown here in the 28 days of the different phases of the moon. It does not show the moon oscillating or rotating on like a disc, like a face of a clock at all. All right, now look at this piece by Fraser Cain of Universe Today, using very fast language and all the buzzwords that we were just talking about, libration, oscillation. But look at the moon. All they show is the phases. They do not show the moon rotating on its axis whatsoever. It's very subtle and it's very deceptive.
I'm Fraser Cain, the publisher of Universe Today. Have you ever noticed that the moon always looks the same? Sure, the phase changes, but the actual features on the moon always look the same from month to month. Does the moon rotate? What's going on? From our perspective here on Earth, the moon always shows us the same face because it's tidally locked to our planet. At some point in the distant past, the moon did rotate from our perspective, but the Earth's gravity kept pulling unevenly at the moon, slowing its rotation. Eventually, the moon locked into place, always displaying the same side to us. But if you look down on the Earth-Moon system from the North Celestial Pole, from the perspective of Polaris, the North Star, you see that the moon actually does rotate on its axis. In fact, as the moon travels around the Earth in a counterclockwise orbit every 27.5 days, it also completes one full rotation on its axis, also moving in a counterclockwise direction. If you look at the time-lapse animation of the moon moving entirely through its phases over the course of a month, you'll notice a strange wobble as if the moon is rocking back and forth on its axis a bit. This is known as libration. On average, the moon is tidally locked to the Earth's surface, but its actual orbit is elliptical. It moves closer and then more distant from the Earth.
So the tide is locking us in orbit, so we see the same face. Libration is turning the moon so it ties in completely with the rotation of a 1,000-mile-per-hour spinning move of the Earth while it's only rotating at 10 miles an hour. It must be like a clock face. That's why we only see the same face, because if it rotated on its axis, we would see the back side. But since it oscillates back and forth, apparently it doesn't do what it's supposed to be doing. Blah, blah, blah. You see how they use just a bunch of words to confuse, diffuse, obfuscate, and make it so we cannot even begin to understand what the heck this guy is even talking about. So let's look at a few more videos, the way they confuse us with all different sorts of definitions and examples of visual representation here.
This one's for all you romantics out there. When you stare up at the moon, do you ever notice you always see the same side of the moon facing the Earth? A lot of people think it's because the moon does not rotate. Surprise, the moon does rotate. So how come we always see the same side? First, let's start the moon rotating on its axis. You would think we would see all the sides. But now, let's put the moon in orbit around the Earth. The time in which the moon rotates once is the same amount of time it takes to orbit around the Earth once. The moon's rotation and revolution speeds are synchronized, so the moon is in a type of synchronous orbit. The result? From Earth's point of view, we always see the same side of our rotating moon. By the way, if you were on the near side of the moon, you would see our rotating Earth fixed in the same spot in the sky all the time. Think about it. Learn more about our moon at nasa.gov.
All right, did you catch that one? Now, notice how they use the hip-hop music and the cute know-it-all girl, little perky girl, to hide the great deception. All right, so see if you can catch it here. Take a look at the green arrow. Notice how the green arrow never rotates, which it should be if it was rotating around the moon, if the moon was orbiting and turning on its axis, yet it never does. Another little grand deception here, folks. All right, so here's another one, and let's see if your astute eyes and powers of observation and thinking independently can figure out what the problem with this one is, as they try and deceive you through simple examples of proving how the same face of the moon is shown to us. Now, the red, I assume, is the sunlight or the backside. I'm not quite sure what the red is, but they're saying there's no rotation as it's going around the Earth. But this isn't the problem. Then they start to explain and show you, well, here's the moon with rotation as it's going around. Well, clearly, if we were standing there on the Earth, we would clearly at some point see the backside of the moon. But that isn't the problem either. Have you figured it out yet? Have you noticed what's not happening here, which is part of the heliocentric round ball Earth theory about why we see the same face of the moon? Simple. Very simple. The Earth is not rotating at 1,000 miles per hour. So they're showing the moon rotating, but there's no rotation of the Earth. Another sleight of hand deception for those that uncritically do not think for themselves. All right, now let's just add a little more fuel to the fire to the CGI Earth and some of the shenanigans they've been pulling on the CGI Earth of late. Gorstat, or the Discover, has released these pictures, the first ones of a full sunlit Earth, we're told, since 1972 in Apollo 17 when they released the photo of the blue marble. And what you'll notice here is the Photoshop guys at NASA love to put in little digs for those with eyes to see to really show you how fake it all is. And so if you see this alleged photograph here of Earth, we see this little clouds in here. Well, we flip it over and turn it around, and what does it spell? S-E-X, folks, okay? These are the games they're playing with us. And here is just a recent find by the great work at the geocentricgnostic.com. He discovered and found the articles of Robert Simmons, who created the blue marble computer graphics image. Data visualizer and designer Robert Simmons never thought he would become Mr. Blue Marble. And here's NASA.gov site. You can find more about Mr. Simmons on the NASA.gov site, so it makes it legitimate. Last time anyone took a photograph from above low Earth orbit showed an entire hemisphere was in 1972. By 2002, we had enough data to make a snapshot of the Earth, so we did. The hard part was creating a flat map of Earth's surface with 4 months of satellite data. He did much of his work. He wrapped up around the flat map around a ball. Interesting, they had to wrap a flat map around a ball. My part was integrating the surface, clouds, and oceans to match people's expectations of how Earth looks from space. More like programming how Earth looks from space, not expectations. The ball became the famous blue marble. Now, this guy looks a little bit scared. I'll put the link into the site with this YouTube. You can check it out more, but we have confirmation that it is a faked CGI image, which due to the Flat Earth Nation's pressure that the NASA's finally admitted that they faked the picture. So that puts all their other photographs into question. Fraud vitiates everything. So in other way, we're seeing different another CGI images, and now they've got Destination Pluto here. And this was just done a few weeks ago. Look at the detail, folks, they have on Pluto. Look at how integrated they can get with their pictures, and still no photographs of Earth. And one of the big complaints of the Flat Earth Nation is, hey, just show us one picture of real Earth being a globe from space, and we'll go away. But they've got their pictures of Pluto, they've got their photographs of Mars, high resolution, density, all different ways of infrared and looking at it, but still nothing of Earth. Why is that, folks? But they do like to play little games with us, and I'm sure most of you have seen this, but I wanted to bring this to the attention. This was the original release last year, the photograph of Pluto, and how it fits perfectly with Pluto, the Disney character. You can't make this shit up. Astronomers discover enormous protogalaxy, proto means primitive, 10 billion light years away. And what is this all about? Well, turns out that the images plainly show there's a rotating disk. Here we go again. The filament is more or less a constant velocity. Once the gas merges with the disk inside the dark matter halo, it's pulled around by rotating gas and dark matter. And we're reading that they discovered strongest support yet of a cold flow model of galaxy formation this is the first smoking gun evidence of how galaxies are formed. And they get into telling you more about that. The measurements indicate the disk is rotating at 400 kilometers per second, somewhat faster than the Milky Way. Now, folks, 10 billion light years. Again, they use numbers so vast and so huge, but we got to call them on this stuff. So let's put in here 10 billion light years in the light year converter chart. So that's 10 million. So let's go 3 more zeros, and that's 10 billion. And so here's the number. So this is thousands, millions, billions, trillions, and quadrillions. And I don't even know what goes after quadrillion. So we're going to have to look at the big size chart to figure this out. And I'm sure they made this up just for NASA. So here's your quadrillion, 10 to the 15th power. So it's quintillionth, sextillionth is the number we're using now to describe what NASA says is 10 billion light years away, yet they're able to determine the galaxy's formations and whether it's rotating in orbits and all the rest of this crap. All right, that's it for me. Come back on another NASA video. Please check out those other 2 videos I suggested about what is happening to planet Earth and the warming and the UVB rays. And I hope you all will be well, and we'll catch you the next time. Thanks for listening.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Under the Masonic moon, plans were made by the bankers in the back room. Get the president out of the way and hire Stanley Kubrick. Under the Masonic moon, under the Masonic moon, everyone hoped that the boys would come home soon. One more day and they'll drop from the plane and splash into the ocean. Under the Masonic moon, Von Braun and his conspirators got a free ride to the States. They turned Nazi into Nassau. They just couldn't wait. Under the Masonic moon, under the Masonic moon, plans were made by the bankers in the back room. The owl sees into the night, and the secret will never be told.
Contact light. Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
The Earth is flat, it's not a sphere. The Earth is flat beneath a big dome atmosphere. The Earth is flat, it's not a ball. The Earth is flat, and that is that, and that is all. The Earth is flat, it does not move. The Earth is flat, and that is so easy to prove. The Earth is flat, send out the call.
Flat earthers, my new friends, I've come to talk about the end. We all once had a hard time seeing where all this conspiracy stuff was leading. But the flat earth awakening has made it all so clear why we're here to serve God, not science. They say the sun is far away, but we can see that's not the case. It all started when we realized they were only showing CGI. And the starlight is not trillions of miles away, like they say in the realm of science. But fools still say that it's a globe. They haven't seen what we've been shown. There wouldn't be any arguments if they just looked at the evidence and knew about Freemasons and the 33. They might see to stand with God, not science. And in the time that I've researched, no longer I see the ball earth. Thankfully the Lord has sent His Son to show us all which side to be on. What the Bible says is actually how it is, but it's opposites in the realm of science.
Was about 6 months ago when we watched some videos and we knew we'd been fooled a long time. So we did a little research and we learned about curvature. Now we know that standing water doesn't bend. We wanna know, have you ever seen a curve? We wanna know, have you ever seen a curve? When you're looking out across the earth, listen up and don't you know, the sun is warm and the moon is cold. Come on, it's been that way for all our time. We're the center of the universe. Yeah, we don't move, it circles us. The flat earth, we don't live on a spinning ball. We wanna know, have you ever seen a curve? We wanna know, have you ever seen a curve? When you're looking out across the earth, yeah, we already know that you haven't seen a curve. We already know that you'll never see a curve, 'cause we got proof it's a flat earth.
And in case there are any conspiracy theorists out there, how would you prove to us that you're in zero gravity?